Good morning, everyone. We are the fifth presenter. My name is Neil Enricoco, and today I am going to give a brief introduction about the difference of global and differentiated model. When we talk about global model of self, it refers to a person's overall perception of value on his or her own. An example of this is our belief. I believe we all here doesn't have the same beliefs, mainly because we came from different cultures and communities. On the other hand, differentiated model of self is the ability to distinguish between emotions and thoughts, meaning the person can determine if he or she is overreacting or overthinking. These are also the people who keeps their feelings aside and relate to variable change. Now let's move on to Gestalt. The whole, as larger than the sum of its parts, is according to Gestalt theory. In the other words, if you look at the components separately, you won't be able to tell what the whole is about. In psychology, Gestalt emphasizes that the whole of anything is greater than its parts, or shall we say, the power of teamwork. I believe that is all on my part. Now let's give it up for Miss Sandra Bacong to explain the rest. Now, let's proceed to phenomenological or humanistic approach. It says that the person is a total person and cannot be reduced into parts, meaning ang pagkatao ay kabuuan ng isang tao, which explains the origin of one's personality as a person based on their point of view. It's about explaining the experience from the point of view of the subject, but of course, analyzing the words that they have spoken or had written. So, I believe this is all we need to know about the phenomenological and humanistic approach. Now, let's move on to the three parts of psychoanalysis. Let's give it up for Miss Sandra Bacong.
Psychoanalysis. The psyche is divided into the id, ego, and superego. The id is the unconscious source of primary sexual, dependent, and aversive impulses, while the superego is the subconsciously interjects societal mores, setting standards to live by, and the superego represents a feeling of self and mediates between momentary realities according to psychoanalytic theory. For example, a well-built and healthy 20-year-old has an illogical phobia of mice. When he sees a mouse or rat, he trembles with fear. Because of his phobia, he frequently finds himself in uncomfortable circumstances. Third, we have self as personality divided into traits, or, for example, the big 5 factors. The most widely used system of traits is called the 5-factor model. This system includes 5 broad traits that can be remembered with the acronym OCEAN: openness, conscientiousness, introversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. First, openness. The tendency to appreciate new art, ideas, values, feelings, and behaviors. Next, or the second one, conscientiousness. The tendency to be careful on time for appointments, to follow rules, and to be hardworking. Third, the tendency to be talkative, sociable, and to enjoy others. The tendency to have a dominant style, or also known as introversion. Fourth, agreeableness. The tendency to agree and go along with others rather than to assert one's own opinion and choices. Lastly, neuroticism. The tendency to frequently experience negative emotions such as anger, worry, and sadness, as well as being interpersonally sensitive. Number 4. The self as divided into dimensions: physical, biological, emotional, behavioral, social, moral, and spiritual. First, we will tackle the physical biological dimension. Is to breathe, move, and live. Physical self-care entails living a healthy lifestyle that includes eating well, drinking plenty of water, and exercising regularly. Consider decluttering your house and office to make it feel more open and manageable. Second one, emotional. It is possible that you will have to set clear time and energy limits. engage in emotional boundaries and helpful relationships, surround yourself with positive people and messages that are encouraging and motivating, and keep your emotions in check. Third, spiritual. You may wish to imagine, practice appreciation, spend time in nature, and be mindful of the non-material aspect of your existence in order to connect with your essence, purpose, and meaning. In your career and life, consider what is important to you. Then, the moral. This dimension refers to a person's ability to distinguish between right and wrong conduct or doing as a human. Lastly, social. One of the most significant forms of impact on human behavior stemming from the culture component is concern for values, norms, rules, and roles.
Real versus ideal self concept. The true self and the ideal self are who and what we are in reality. The true self is full of potential for growth, happiness, willpower, and gifts, among other things. The true self, on the other hand, has flaws that we don't like. The ideal self is the person we believe we should be, and it serves as a guide to help us reach our full potential and achieve self-actualization. It is important to understand the difference between one's ideal and real self. Individuals may believe that they are lacking in some way, that they are not living up to the ideal because the neurotic self is split between an ideal self and a corresponding despised self. They believe that they are failing in some way in comparison to what they should be. The neurotic's objectives are unrealistic, if not impossible. The despised self, on the other hand, believes that this incarnation is its real self since it feels loathed by others around it. Now let's go to Horney. Karen Horney was a Neo-Freudian psychologist known for her theory of neurotic needs. She also made substantial contributions to humanism, self-psychology, and other traditional perspectives and the psychology of women. Horney felt that if humans were placed in a positive atmosphere, they would be able to achieve their full potentials, discipline and kindness, as well as the lack of anxiety inducing violence that will create feelings, a sense of comfort and self-assurance, as well as a desire to achieve self-realization. So this is the self-image in the neurotic made by Horney that splits into the spy self and ideal self. The neurotic moves up and down between a false sense of perfection and a manifestation of self-hate like a clock's pendulum. Horney coined the terms tyranny of the shoulds and the neurotic's hopeless search for glory to describe this phenomenon. She concluded that these ingrained psychic traits will forever prevent an individual's potential from being realized unless the neurotic cycle is broken, whether through treatment or otherwise. Now the swings between hating self and pretending to be perfect. A neurotic person experiences two instances, pretending to be perfect and self-hatred. You're actualizing your ideal self when you pretend to be perfect. This is known as the neurotic quest for glory. The first of its three aspects is the need for perfection. In order to shape the entire personality into the idealized self, neurotics aren't satisfied with the minor tweaks, like nothing less than complete perfection is acceptable. They strive for perfection by creating a complex set of shoulds and should nots, which Horney dubbed the tyranny of the should. Neurotics automatically tell themselves, forget about the disgraced creature you truly are, this is how you should be, as they strive for an image ideal of perfection. Neurotic ambition, or the compulsive need for supremacy, is a second important component of the neurotic quest for glory. Although neurotics have an overabundance of desire to be the best at everything, they usually focus their efforts on the things that are most likely to lead to success. Third and most harmful part of the neurotic quest for glory is the desire for spiteful victory. The desire for vengeance may be camouflaged as a desire for achievement or success, but its principal purpose is to put others to shame or defeat them by one's own success, or to obtain the capacity to inflict suffering on them, mostly of the humiliating variety. and neurotic claims. Neurotic claims are believing that something is wrong with the outside world, and they also proclaim that they are special and therefore entitled to be treated in accordance with their idealized view of themselves. Lastly, the neurotic pride. It is a compulsively driven attempt to overcompensate for and dissociate oneself from deep-seated feelings of inadequacy that interfere with the unfolding emergence of the real self. Self-hatred, on the other hand, exists. As a result, the person is at odds with himself, or he is ashamed of who he is, of his sentiments, resources, and activities, and he actively withdraws his interest in himself. The self-hatred arises from an injury to his pride as a result of his inability to succeed. They will transform into the person they believe they should be, and the neurotic begins to punish his true self for failing to live up to the standards he has set for himself. The lack of identification with it and its suffering emphasizes the divide between the individual's true self and the individual's idealized self.
Carl Rogers, a psychologist, developed the person-centered theory. There are three main points to his theory. 1. There is a tendency for all matter, both organic and inorganic, to evolve from simpler to more complex forms. It is called the formative tendency. It is a person's innate desire to develop and grow, seeking to grow in a direction of an ideal self while also contributing positively to society. 2. There is a tendency within all humans and other organisms to move toward completion or fulfillment of potentials called the actualizing tendency. It is a desire to grow, like a flower growing between the cracks of concrete. In the case of humans, we all want to express ourselves creatively and reach our full potential. 3. He believes that actualizing tendency is the only motive people possess. The formative tendency is just broad and both subsumes and exists in dialogue with the actualizing tendency.
As we grow whilst following the formative tendency, we can eventually create awareness, and this awareness becomes our sense of self, also called self-concept. Self-concept includes all those aspects of one's being and experiences that are perceived in awareness by the individual. Essentially, it is what we think ourselves are. When our self-concept aligns with reality, there is a congruence. A human with a congruent self-concept and reality can develop a healthy personality because he or she is aware of what he or she really is. However, not all of the time is self-concept in line with reality. If there is a mismatch between how you see yourself and who you wish you were, or your ideal self, your self-concept is incongruent. This incongruence can negatively impact self-esteem.